Hello, I'm Essay, your AI essayist. Please note that all content, audio and video in this presentation are AI generated. As AI can sometimes produce inaccuracies, I encourage you to verify any factual information presented. With that in mind, let's begin.
In the tumultuous landscape of 19th century political and economic thought, Karl Marx' 1847 work, The Poverty of Philosophy, stands as a crucial intervention. It is a polemical yet profoundly insightful response to Pierre-Joseph Proudhon's philosophy of poverty. This work, far more than a simple rebuttal, lays bare the nascent framework of Marx's historical materialism and his incisive critique of capitalist political economy. At its core, The Poverty of Philosophy repudiates Proudhon's attempt to reconcile inherent contradictions within capitalism. Marx advocated instead for the revolutionary overthrow of the system. Marx asserts that Proudhon's methodological failings stem from an ahistorical, idealist orientation that prevents a comprehension of the dialectical progression of economic structures. Marx's primary contention centers on Proudhon's flawed appropriation of the Hegelian dialectic. Hegel viewed this process as unfolding in the world of ideas. Marx grounded the dialectic in material reality. He saw it as a reflection of real historical struggles. Proudhon, in Marx's assessment, merely juggles abstract categories, failing to recognize that economic relations are not immutable laws of nature, but rather products of specific historical modes of production. Proudhon extracts categories, such as division of labor, competition, credit, and property from the existing economic system. He considers these eternal, universal truths. Marx argues that Proudhon fails to see these as historically specific social relations. Marx's critique manifests in his meticulous examination of Proudhon's conception of value. Proudhon endeavors to discover the constituted value of commodities, a notion predicated on the idea that labor time should be the measure of exchange value. Marx dismantles this proposition. He underscores that labor time, in a capitalist system, could never serve as an accurate or fair measure of value, given the inherent exploitation of labor. Marx details how Proudhon envisions reforming capitalism by eliminating its bad side while retaining its good side. Marx mocks this approach, claiming it reveals a fundamental misunderstanding of the dialectical nature of capitalism. He argues that its inherent contradictions cannot be resolved through piecemeal reforms, but only through a revolutionary transformation of the entire system. The good side and bad side are inextricably linked. Marx applies a dialectical methodology developed and adapted from Hegel to expose the flaws in Proudhon's arguments. Marx seizes upon the concept of contradiction, which Hegel used to analyze the movement of thought, and applies it to the material world. Marx's critique of Proudhon's analysis represents a significant shift away from idealist philosophy. This is an embrace of a materialist approach. Marx argues that Proudhon's inability to grasp the dialectical nature of economic categories prevents his comprehension of the historical forces driving societal change. The influence of Hegel's science of logic can be seen in Marx's approach of identifying the internal contradictions as the driving forces of change. The enduring relevance of Marx's critique lies in its emphasis on the historical and social embeddedness of economic theory. This challenges the conventional neoclassical economics, which often treats markets as abstract, self-regulating entities divorced from historical and social contexts. Marx's historical materialism offers a vital perspective for understanding contemporary economic phenomena. In his critical of globalization, financialization, and increasing income inequality, his insights encourage a framework center in historical and social power structures. The impact of Marx's work goes beyond his era. He emphasizes the vital importance of relating economic theories to historical reality. Critical theory as a field greatly benefited from this approach. Thinkers such as the members of the Frankfurt School, including Adorno, Horkheimer, and Marcuse, drew directly from Marx's critique of ideology and his analysis of the relationship between economic base and cultural superstructure. They applied this method to the study of mass culture, media, and the rise of authoritarianism. Marx's intellectual debts are many. The most obvious is to Hegel, whose dialectical method provided Marx with a crucial tool for critical analysis. Yet, Marx transformed Hegel's idealism, grounding it in a materialist perspective. Simultaneously, Marx engaged deeply with the socialist and utopian socialist thinkers of his time, particularly Saints Simon and Fourier. While he shared their critique of capitalism, Marx rejected their utopian schemes for social reform. He favored a scientific analysis of capitalism's inherent contradictions. Marx believed that these would inevitably lead to its revolutionary overthrow by the proletariat. The Poverty of Philosophy presents a crucial moment in the development of Marx's thought. It foreshadows the more elaborate and systematic analysis of capitalism that he would later develop in Capital. It also demonstrates his intellectual skill in dismantling the flawed logic of competing theories, establishing dialectical materialism as a theoretical powerhouse of its Marx's alternative framework, detailed in The Poverty of Philosophy, stands upon historical materialism. This concept posits that material conditions, specifically the modes of production and exchange, determine social structures, political systems, and even intellectual life. It is an inversion of Hegelian idealism, which prioritizes ideas as the prime movers of history. For Marx, consciousness does originate with existence. Rather, existence determines consciousness. This perspective places the economic base at the foundation of society, with everything else forming a superstructure that arises due to. Within this framework, Marx introduces the concepts of the forces and relations of production. The forces of production encompass the means of production such as raw materials, tools, machinery, and technology, along with human labour power. The relations of production, on the other hand, are the social relationships that govern the organisation and control of the forces of production. Under capitalism, these relations are characterised by private ownership of the means of production and wage labour. Marx argued that historical change arises from the conflict between the forces and relations of production. As technology advances and the forces of production develop, they inevitably come into contradiction with the existing relations of production. This tension leads to class struggle. As the class that controls the means of production, the bourgeoisie under capitalism, seeks to maintain its power, the exploited class, the proletariat, eventually recognizes its own interests and rises up to overthrow the existing order, establishing a new mode of production with relations of production aligned with the advanced force. A central element of Marx's critique is his development of a labour theory of value. This theory, inherited from classical economists like Ricardo, asserts that the value of a commodity is determined by the socially necessary labour time required for its production. In The Poverty of Philosophy, Marx extends this theory to analyse the dynamics of capitalist production. He argues that workers are paid only a portion of the value they create, with surplus value appropriated by the capitalist. This surplus value is the source of profit. It embodies the exploitation of labour inherent in the capitalist system. For example, suppose a worker labours for 8 hours and produces goods that sell for $100. If the worker receives $50 in wages, the capitalist pockets the remaining $50 as surplus value. Marx contends this arrangement perpetuates the exploitation of labour. The capitalist amasses wealth due to the unpaid labour of the worker. The worker remains impoverished due to the extraction of surplus. The Poverty of Philosophy also foreshadows the concept of commodity fetishism. Commodity fetishism describes the process whereby social relations between people are masked as economic relations among things. In a capitalist society, commodities appear to have intrinsic value, independent of the labour that produced them. Consumers focus on exchange value. They lose sight of the social relations of production. This obscures the exploitation inherent in the system. Marx argued this fetishism contributes to the mystification of capitalism and prevents individuals from recognising the true nature of their social relations. The work was created amidst the rapid rise of industrial capitalism in the 19th century. This era saw unprecedented levels of social inequality. It also saw widespread poverty and exploitation of the working class. Witnessing this, Marx became deeply involved in revolutionary movements, including the Communist League. The Poverty of Philosophy serves as both a theoretical critique of capitalism and a call to action for the proletariat to overthrow the system. The direct influence of the Poverty of Philosophy can be seen in the development of Marxist theory and subsequent works of Marx and Engels, such as the Communist Manifesto. This later work builds upon the foundations laid out in The Poverty of Philosophy, providing a more systematic account of historical materialism, class struggle, the inevitable downfall of capitalism. Marx's critique of capitalism and his emphasis on class struggle retain relevance in contemporary society. Issues such as income inequality, globalization, and the gig economy reflect enduring tensions between capital and labour. His concepts of historical materialism and the labour theory of value provide frameworks for analysing these issues. His theories enable researchers to examine the underlying structures of power and exploitation. Marx's writings profoundly influenced diverse fields. These fields include sociology, political science, and cultural studies. Critical theory, particularly, draws heavily on Marx's analyses of power, ideology, and social structures. Thinkers like Lenin built upon and adapted Marx's ideas. Their efforts focused on practical applications, within particular historical contexts. The echoes of The Poverty of Philosophy reverberate within contemporary political and social movements. Debates surrounding Marxism and its applicability to the 21st century continue, fueled by the ongoing relevance of Marx's critique of capitalism and his call for social transformation.
We really appreciate you tuning in to this AI-powered presentation. Our goal is to push the boundaries of AI in content creation, and your input is invaluable. If there's a particular subject you'd like to see us tackle next, or if you have suggestions on how we could fine-tune our AI's creative prompts, please don't hesitate to leave your ideas in the comments section. We're excited to bring you more unique content very soon.